Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of our podcast. I'm Alex, and today we're talking about something that every student in the world wants to know: how to study less and still get better grades. Sounds impossible, right?
Yeah, it sounds like one of those too good to be true things. But actually, it's not magic. It's about how you study, not how long you study. I used to spend hours in front of my books, thinking more time meant more learning. But guess what? I was just wasting energy.
Exactly. I think most of us have done that. We sit for hours, highlight everything in our textbook, reread notes, and feel productive, but in the end, we don't remember much. It's like our brain just refuses to store the information.
I know. That's because we confuse studying hard with studying smart. The real secret is using techniques that make your brain work efficiently. You don't need to force yourself to study for 6 hours straight. If you study the right way for just 2 hours, you can learn even more.
Totally. You know what's funny? There's this research showing that after about 30 to 45 minutes of focus, your brain starts to lose attention. So those long study marathons aren't really helping. They just make you tired and forget things faster.
Exactly. It's like running a car engine nonstop. It overheats. Your brain is the same. You need breaks, space, and balance. That's why one of my favorite study techniques is the Pomodoro technique.
Ah, the Pomodoro technique. That one changed everything for me too. For those who don't know, it's simple. You study for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and after 4 rounds, you take a longer break.
Yeah, and those short breaks make a big difference. During the breaks, I stretch, drink water, or just walk around my room. It resets my brain and helps me come back fresh. When I started using it, I realized I could remember more and stay focused for longer.
Same here. And you know what's cool? This technique also tricks your brain into starting easier. When you know you only have to study for 25 minutes, it feels less scary. You just start, and that's half the battle won.
Yes, getting started is usually the hardest part. Once you start, your brain gets into the flow. But Alex, I think we should talk about another big problem students have: passive studying.
Oh, yes, that's a big one. Passive studying is when you just read your notes or watch videos without actually doing anything with the information. It feels like studying, but your brain is just receiving, not processing.
Exactly. To really learn something, your brain needs to be active. You have to think, recall, and use what you learned. That's where techniques like active recall and spaced repetition come in, two of my absolute favorites.
Active recall is basically testing yourself, right? Instead of reading your notes again, you close your notebook and try to remember what you learned. It forces your brain to retrieve the information, and that process strengthens your memory.
Yes, it's like exercising your brain. Every time you try to recall something, your brain gets stronger at remembering it next time. It's the difference between watching someone lift weights and actually lifting them yourself.
That's such a great comparison. And spaced repetition is kind of the next level of that. It's when you review information at increasing intervals, like today, then in 2 days, then a week later, then 2 weeks later.
Exactly. You can use flashcard apps like Anki or Quizlet to do it automatically. They remind you when it's time to review something before you forget it. It's like perfectly timed review sessions.
That's why you don't need to spend all day studying. You just need to review smartly. It's about timing and technique, not endless hours.
Right. When I started using active recall and spaced repetition, I noticed I didn't have to reread my textbooks anymore. I could remember concepts for weeks without much review.
I had the same experience. And the best part? It gives you more time for yourself. You can relax, hang out, or sleep early and still perform better in exams.
That's the dream, isn't it? But before we move to the next part, let's talk about one more thing that ruins students' results: multitasking.
Oh, yes. I used to study while checking my phone, listening to music with lyrics, or chatting with friends. I thought I was doing great because I could handle many things at once. But honestly, it was just slow and stressful.
Exactly. Our brain can't focus deeply on two things at the same time. When you switch between studying and your phone, your attention breaks. You lose focus, and you need extra time to get back on track.
So true. If you want better grades with less studying, you need deep work. Full concentration for a short time. That's much more powerful than half focus for hours.
Exactly. When I study, I now turn off notifications, close social media, and make a small to-do list. One subject, one goal, one timer. That's it. And when I'm done, I reward myself.
Same here. I even use a little rule: when I study, I study. When I rest, I rest. It's simple, but it keeps me balanced.
That's beautiful. Because honestly, studying shouldn't take over your life. It's about learning smarter, not harder.
You know, Lana, when I started learning about the science behind studying, everything changed for me. I used to think learning was just about reading again and again until it stuck. But actually, our brains work in a much smarter way. Learning is not about repetition only, it's about connection. Every time we learn something new, our brain creates a tiny connection called a neural pathway. The more we use that pathway, the stronger it becomes, like walking on the same trail until it turns into a clear road.
That's such a great way to explain it. It's like when you walk through tall grass for the first time, it's hard to move through. But if you walk that same path every day, it becomes easy and open. That's exactly how our memory works. When we use active recall or spaced repetition, we're basically walking on that same path again and again, making it stronger each time. That's why information becomes easier to remember over time, not harder.
Exactly. And what's even cooler is that our brains actually forget things on purpose. Forgetting is not a problem. It's part of the learning process. If you forget something and then try to recall it again, that active struggling to remember makes the memory even stronger. That's why active recall is so powerful. It's not about getting everything right all the time. It's about making your brain work.
That's true. I used to get so frustrated when I forgot something. I thought it meant I was bad at studying or just not smart enough. But when I learned that forgetting and recalling actually build stronger memory, I started feeling better about it. It's kind of comforting, right? You don't have to be perfect, you just have to keep practicing in the right way.
Yes, and I think that's one of the biggest mistakes students make, thinking smart people just get it instantly. But in reality, even the smartest students use techniques that make their brains more efficient. Like they understand how to use focus, timing, and review together. That's what separates studying smart from studying hard.
Totally. I remember reading something about the forgetting curve. It's this idea that after you learn something, you start to forget it very quickly, unless you review it. Like after one day, you might remember only 60%. But if you review it a few times, a curve gets flatter, meaning you remember longer. That's why spaced repetition is such a lifesaver. It fights the forgetting curve perfectly.
I've seen that too. It's crazy how predictable forgetting is. Our brains are kind of lazy. They try to save energy by letting go of unused information. So when you review something at the right time, you're basically telling your brain, hey, this is important, don't delete it. And it listens. That's how long-term memory is built.
You know what I love about this whole thing? It proves that studying doesn't have to be painful. When you understand how your mind works, you can design your own system. you can make learning more like a game, where every review, every test, every recall makes you stronger. It's like leveling up in your favorite video game.
I love that comparison. And it's true. Your brain actually rewards you when you learn efficiently. When you make a connection or recall something successfully, your brain releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical. That's why learning something new can sometimes feel exciting or satisfying. It's like your brain saying, "Nice job."
That explains why I sometimes feel proud after solving a hard problem or remembering something I thought I forgot. It's literally my brain celebrating. And I think students need to know that studying doesn't have to feel like punishment. It can actually be enjoyable if you approach it like a challenge, not like torture.
Exactly. That's why I always say, learning is not about how long you study, but how engaged you are when studying. You could study for 1 hour with full focus, asking questions, recalling information, testing yourself, and learn more than someone who studies distractedly for 4 hours.
Absolutely. It's the same in fitness. One person might work out for 20 minutes, but focus and move correctly, while another spends 2 hours doing it wrong. It's not the time that counts, it's the method. When you apply that to learning, everything changes.
You know, there's another thing that really helps me remember: teaching others. Whenever I explain what I learned to someone else, even if it's just to my little cousin, I realize how much better I understand it. Teaching forces you to organize your thoughts, and that deepens your understanding.
Oh, totally. I do that too. Sometimes I talk to myself while studying. I pretend I'm teaching a class. It sounds a little funny, but it works. If I can explain a topic in simple words, it means I really understand it. If not, then I know I need to go back and study it again.
Exactly. There's even a name for that. It's called the Feynman technique, after a famous physicist. The idea is, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. It's such a powerful way to learn.
That's a great one. And I think this connects perfectly to another study strategy, interleaving. It's when you mix different subjects or topics in one study session instead of focusing on just one. Like study math for 30 minutes, then English, then science. It confuses your brain a bit, but that challenge helps you remember better.
Yes, that's such an underrated method. When your brain has to switch between different kinds of problems, it learns to adapt and recall faster. It's harder in the moment, but later during exams, your brain performs better because it's used to flexibility.
Totally. I used to think I should finish one subject completely before moving to another, but now I mix them up. At first it felt messy, but after a week or two, I realized I was actually remembering more because my brain was getting stronger at switching and retrieving.
That's amazing, and it really shows how powerful our brains are when we use them right. Honestly, all these techniques, active recall, spaced repetition, interleaving, teaching, they all work because they make your brain active. You're not just a listener, you're a participant in your own learning.
Exactly. You become the driver, not the passenger. And that's the difference between students who just get by and those who truly learn and enjoy it. When you take control of your learning, you also take control of your results. You know, Alex, something I realize is that all these study methods, like active recall and spaced repetition, don't really work if your habits aren't in place. I mean, you can know what to do, but if you never actually do it regularly, it's useless. I used to get excited about new methods for a few days, but then I'd stop. That's when I learned that habits are more important than motivation. Motivation fades, but habits stay.
Exactly, Lana. You're spot on. People wait to feel motivated before studying, but that's a mistake. The truth is, motivation comes after you start, not before. It's like going to the gym. The first few minutes are hard, but once you get moving, you start feeling good. So I stopped waiting for motivation and started building small study habits that are easy to keep. For example, instead of planning to study for 3 hours, I just tell myself to sit down and study for 10 minutes. Usually, I end up studying much longer.
Yes, that's such a smart trick. I think the hardest part is just starting. I sometimes use the 2-minute rule I learned from the book Atomic Habits. It says that any habit can start small, like I'll just read one page or I'll just open my notebook. Once you begin, it's easier to continue. I used to think big goals needed big actions, but now I know small, consistent steps are what truly matter.
That's one of my favorite rules too, and it works for studying perfectly. When you start small, you remove the pressure. I used to make big to-do lists and feel overwhelmed before I even began. Now, I just focus on doing the first small step. For example, if I have to study chemistry, I'll just open the textbook and review the first question. And like you said, once I start, momentum builds naturally.
Right. It's kind of like pushing a heavy door. The hardest part is that first push. Once it's moving, it's easier to keep it open. That's how habits feel. And when you repeat small study actions daily, your brain starts to expect it. You don't have to force yourself anymore. It becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth.
Exactly. And I think people underestimate how powerful the environment is too. For example, when I tried to study on my bed, I always got sleepy. But when I set up a small study corner with a desk, good lighting, and no distractions, my focus improved instantly. The environment tells your brain what to do. If you're in a place where you usually relax, your brain thinks it's rest time. But if you have a study space, it tells your brain, hey, it's focus time now.
That's so true. I noticed the same thing. I even started using music to help me get into study mode. Every time I play the same calm background music, it's like a signal from my brain. Time to concentrate. It's amazing how little things can make such a big difference. I also keep my phone far away when I study because one notification can break my focus completely.
Same here. Phones are like little focus killers. Even if you don't check them, just knowing they're nearby can distract your mind. I usually turn mine to Do Not Disturb and put it in another room. That one change made my study time twice as productive. I also keep some water and a notebook next to me so I don't have to stand up every 5 minutes. It keeps me in the zone.
That's really smart. You know what else helps me? Having a fixed study time. I don't make it strict, but I try to study around the same time every day, usually after dinner. My brain slowly got used to that routine, so when that time comes, I naturally feel like studying. It's like my body clock knows what to expect.
Exactly. That's called habit stacking. You attach a new habit to something you already do. For example, after brushing your teeth or eating dinner, you can say, okay, now I'll study for 30 minutes. It connects new habits to old ones, so they stick better. I do the same thing after breakfast. I go over my notes for a few minutes before leaving for class. It's short, but powerful.
Yes, and it really works. When you make studying part of your daily routine, it stops feeling like a chore. I used to treat studying like a big, scary task. Now it's just another part of my day, like washing my face or making tea. That small shift in mindset made me less anxious about exams.
That's an important point. Mindset. When students see studying as punishment, their brains automatically resist it. But when they see it as a process of growth, they approach it differently. Instead of saying, I have to study, I tell myself, I get to study. It sounds simple, but it changes everything.
I love that. I get to study. It reminds you that learning is a privilege, not torture. So many people around the world don't even get a chance to study, and yet we sometimes complain about it. When I started feeling grateful for the opportunity to learn, I became more interested and focused naturally.
Same here. Gratitude changes your attitude. And another mindset shift that helped me is seeing mistakes as feedback, not failure. When I get something wrong, I don't get upset anymore. I try to understand why I got it wrong. It's just part of the learning process.
Exactly. I used to panic every time I didn't understand something, but now I just take a deep breath and remind myself that confusion is part of learning. If you never feel confused, it means you're not challenging yourself enough. Every time you struggle, your brain is growing stronger.
That's so true. And speaking of confusion, I also learned the power of taking breaks. I used to think studying longer was better, but then I realized our brains can only focus for about 45 minutes before losing attention. So now I use the Pomodoro technique. Study for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and repeat. It keeps my mind fresh.
Oh, I use that too. It's honestly one of my favorite techniques. During my breaks, I usually stretch, drink water, or just walk a bit. I avoid scrolling through my phone because that drains my energy. When I return to studying, I feel more focused. It's like pressing the refresh button in your brain.
Exactly. Breaks are not wasted time. They help your memory and focus. And it's interesting, when you take short breaks, your brain is actually continuing processing what you just studied in the background. So even when you're relaxing, you're still learning.
That's so cool. It's like your brain keeps working even when you stop. It reminds me that rest is part of productivity. You don't have to be busy all the time to be effective. Smart rest is also a smart study habit.
Totally. When I started applying all this, small consistent habits, right environment, right mindset, and proper breaks, my grades improved even though I was studying less. I wasn't stressed anymore. I just became more strategic.
Same here. I realized that less studying, better grades isn't about doing less effort. It's about doing the right kind of effort. When you focus on habits, mindset, and science based methods, learning becomes faster, easier, and way more enjoyable. Alex, one thing that really used to mess up my studying was poor planning. I used to just open my notebook and study whatever I saw first. There was no order, no structure, no direction. Sometimes I'd waste an entire evening reviewing easy things I already knew instead of focusing on what I actually needed to learn. That's when I realized that planning doesn't have to be complicated, it just needs to be smart.
Exactly. I can totally relate to that. I used to do the same, studying randomly, thinking I was productive just because I was reading. But studying without a plan is like driving without a map. You might move a lot, but you don't really go anywhere. What changed everything for me was setting clear goals before each session. Like, instead of saying, I'll study biology today, I say, I'll understand how photosynthesis works and be able to explain it without looking. That gives direction and focus.
That's a great idea. I also started doing something similar. I write down 3 main goals before I start. Just 3, not 10. That way, I don't feel overwhelmed. For example, review chapter 5, practice 10 math problems, and summarize lecture notes. If I finish those, I feel accomplished. It's better than having a long list that never ends and makes you feel like you failed.
Yes, small wins are so important. They give you momentum and confidence. Another thing that helps me plan better is using the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. It means that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. Or, in studying terms, 80% of your test questions will come from 20% of the key material. So instead of trying to memorize every single word, I focus on understanding the core concepts.
That's so smart. I used to waste time memorizing details without seeing the big picture. But now I ask myself, what are the most important points the teacher keeps repeating, or what are the main ideas of this topic? Once I understand the main ideas deeply, the details make more sense naturally. It saves so much time.
Exactly. Understanding first, memorizing second. And something else that helps is reviewing actively instead of passively. Like, instead of just rereading notes, I quiz myself.
I cover my notebook and try to explain what I remember. If I get stuck, I go back and fill the gaps. That's active recall again. And it's a great way to make your study sessions more effective without spending more time.
Yes, and that also helps prevent burnout, which is something so many students struggle with. Burnout doesn't come from studying too much, it comes from studying the wrong way. When you're sitting for hours without results, it drains your energy and motivation. But when you see progress, even from short sessions, you feel excited to continue.
You're so right. I've experienced burnout before, and it's not fun. You lose focus, you feel tired all the time, and you start hating your subjects. That's why I now schedule breaks and free days on purpose. I treat rest as part of my study plan, not something to feel guilty about. For example, I take one evening a week to completely disconnect. No books, no screens, just relax. It keeps my mind healthy.
That's a great idea. I think students sometimes forget that rest is actually productive. Your brain needs time to organize all the information you've learned. I used to feel bad about taking breaks, but now I realize they're necessary. If you push yourself too hard, you end up wasting more time later because your brain gets tired and stops absorbing.
Exactly. Quality over quantity. I've also noticed that exercise and sleep play a big role in how well I study. When I sleep less, I forget things more easily. And even a 15-minute walk outside can help clear my head. It's like pressing a reset button for your brain.
That's so true. I actually started going for a short walk after studying, and I realized it helps me remember more. There's research showing that light exercise improves memory because it increases blood flow to your brain. And sleep? Sleep is magic. When I study late and don't sleep enough, I can't remember anything the next day.
Yes, sleep is like the brain's save button. During deep sleep, your brain takes what you learned and stores it in long-term memory. So if you skip sleep to study more, it's like writing an essay but never pressing save. You lose it all.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. I'll never forget that. Don't study without saving your work. That's so true. And you know what else helps me before exams? I review out loud. I talk to myself like I'm giving a presentation. It helps me remember better and also builds my confidence for the real exam.
That's a brilliant technique. I do that too. It's like rehearsing before performance. When you explain things out loud, you identify what you truly understand and what you're just pretending to know. And when you enter the exam room, your brain remembers that speech, so the answers come more naturally.
Exactly. And speaking of confidence, I think mindset plays a big part before exams. I used to get very nervous, like heart racing, stomach hurting, the whole thing. But now I tell myself, I've done my part, I've prepared, and I'll do my best. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just thinking that way helps me stay calm and think clearly during the test.
That's so important. I used to think nerves meant I wasn't ready, but now I know it's normal. A little stress actually helps you focus. It's your brain getting ready to perform. The trick is not letting it turn into panic. I usually take deep breaths and remind myself that exams are just a way to show what I've learned, not a test of my worth.
I love that. It's true. Exams are not about proving your value as a person. They're just feedback. If you do great, that's awesome. If you don't, you learn what to improve next time. When I started seeing exams as a challenge instead of a threat, I stopped fearing them so much.
That's the best attitude to have. In the end, good grades are a result of consistent, smart effort, not stress or endless hours of studying. Once you master your system, studying becomes lighter, your confidence grows, and you actually enjoy learning.
Exactly. Less studying, better grades. Not because you're lazy, but because you're smart about it. You use your time wisely, protect your energy, and keep your mind balanced. That's what real success looks like. So, Alex, we've talked about a lot of techniques: active recall, spaced repetition, better planning. smart rest, and mindset. But I think what ties them all together is consistency. None of these things work if you only do them once or twice. It's about creating small, daily habits that slowly build up into something powerful.
Exactly. Consistency beats intensity every time. I remember when I used to study for 10 hours straight before exams, and then I'd forget half of it later. Now, I study maybe 2 hours a day, but I do it regularly, and my grades are better. It's funny, once you stop chasing long hours and start focusing on regular habits, you actually learn more with less effort.
That's so true. People often think success in studying comes from huge effort or sacrifice. But really, it's the tiny, consistent actions that make the biggest difference. Like reviewing a few flashcards while drinking coffee, explaining one concept to yourself before bed, or spending 5 minutes rewriting your notes neatly. Those small things add up fast.
Totally. It reminds me of the compound effect, like interest in a bank account, but for knowledge. Every small study session adds a bit to your learning balance. Over time, it grows, and suddenly you realize you're way ahead of where you started. You didn't notice it happening, but the results show up naturally.
That's such a great way to see it. I think if more students understood that, they wouldn't burn themselves out before exams. It's not about working harder, it's about working smarter and regularly. Like making studying part of your routine, not a punishment you do at the last minute.
Exactly. And it's not only about studying, it's also about knowing yourself. Everyone learns differently. Some people remember better through writing, others through explaining, some by drawing mind maps. I think every student should experiment a little to find their study personality.
That's a really good point. For me, I learn best by teaching others, even if it's just pretending to teach. I used to stand in front of my mirror and explain topics out loud, like I was giving a class. It sounded funny at first, but it worked. When I could explain it clearly, I knew I truly understood it.
Same here. I do the same thing sometimes. It's actually a proven technique called the Feynman method. If you can teach something simply, you've mastered it. I love using that for tough subjects. It forces me to simplify my thoughts, and that's where real understanding happens.
Exactly. And you know what's funny? Once you study this way, learning becomes enjoyable. You're not fighting against time anymore. You're cooperating with your brain. It starts to feel good, like progress instead of pressure.
I love that. Progress instead of pressure. That's a quote right there. I think that's what every student should aim for, to make learning less about fear and more about curiosity. If you enjoy the process, good grades will follow naturally.
Right. And even if sometimes things don't go perfectly, like getting a lower grade than expected, it doesn't mean you failed. It's just feedback. You can always adjust your methods, try new approaches, and get better. The key is to not give up just because one technique didn't work right away.
Exactly. And learning is personal. It's not one size fits all. It's like building your own system that fits your brain, your time, and your lifestyle. Once you find that system, you'll feel unstoppable. You'll study less, understand more, and still have time to enjoy your life.
That's so true. I think students often forget that studying shouldn't take away your life. It should improve it. When you study smart, you have more time for hobbies, friends, rest, and all the things that make you human. Balance is the secret ingredient.
Absolutely. And that balance doesn't mean doing everything perfectly. It means knowing when to push and when to rest. It means taking care of your mental health as much as your grades. Because if you're not mentally okay, no amount of studying will work.
Exactly. I think one of the most important lessons is that your well being comes first. When you're healthy, happy, and motivated, your brain becomes 10 times more effective. So, self care isn't a distraction from studying, it's part of it.
That's such a great note to end on.
So, for anyone listening, if you take just one thing from this conversation, let it be this. Studying smarter is about understanding yourself, being consistent, and respecting your brain. It's not about doing more, it's about doing better.
Perfectly said, Alex. Remember, less studying doesn't mean less learning. It means learning in a way that fits you, in a way that gives you freedom and results. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just good grades, it's to actually grow, to understand, and to become the best version of yourself.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks, Alex, for another amazing conversation. I always love how we can take a topic like studying and turn it into something inspiring.
Same here, Alex. And to everyone listening, start small, stay consistent, and be kind to yourself while learning. You've got this.
Exactly. And as always, keep learning smarter, not harder. See you all next time.